A lot of the examples that I'm going to cite today for the story and narrative process came from a very bad place. It came from a lot of hatred. I don't necessarily think that in the long run that was a bad thing. I think that the right amount of hatred can give you fuel to do far more creative projects and explore new areas that other games and genres aren't doing.
It is easier to describe something you hate than something you love. It is easier to critique than to praise. It is easier to understand the fault in one's work or one's understanding of the world than it is to provide insight as to how they got to that rationale in the first place. This begs the question, is it that surprising when a platform that gives the power of expression to its audience is riddled with critique? There is no shortage of videos on YouTube tearing down art, and definitely no shortage of curious onlookers. Taking your passion and turning it into strength is a core belief of the Sith in Star Wars. And what irony that is, seeing as the most elegantly written Star Wars game spawned from this notion, one it itself critiques. I am of course talking about Knights of the Old Republic 2, the Sith Lords. It's actually kind of nice going back to this game because my very first video was on this topic to a degree. Knights of the Old Republic 2, or KOTOR 2 for short, is my favorite Star Wars game ever made. Better than Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast, Jedi Knight Jedi Academy, and KOTOR 1. The themes of individuality, predetermined fates, choices, morality, and the critiques of the mythos as a whole are absolutely captivating. Sure, KOTOR 1 had a great adventure narrative with a shocking twist, but KOTOR 2 actively decided to take a sledgehammer to everything we accepted as truth. To view the Star Wars universe of Jedi, Sith, Empires, Rebellions, Scavengers, Mandalorians, and everything else in between as flawed. A whole 13 years before The Last Jedi tried and, in my opinion, failed to do. There are far longer analytical videos that do justice to these topics, so I won't delve into those today. What I wanted to focus on was the motivation that led to this work of art and how it reminded me of one important lesson. Hatred is a gift. Those 4 words were written out in a presentation by the game's lead designer and writer Chris Avellone at Framework 2009, a veteran in the gaming industry who was behind titles such as Planescape Torment, Icewind Dale, Neverwinter Nights, Alpha Protocol, and Fallout New Vegas. In said presentation, Chris adamantly believed that hatred is what drives the art form forward, to critique what you believe to be flawed about a product and attempt to understand what could be better. When Obsidian was given the opportunity to make a sequel to KOTOR, Chris's response was not one of joy. Rather, it was of hesitation and frustration. It wasn't pure seething hatred for the Star Wars franchise, as he was a fan of it in his youth. Instead, it was hatred for a specific element that, as a whole, infected every aspect of said universe: the Force. The idea of this indescribable force of nature that essentially predetermined the fate of the galaxy was not one he was a fan of, an influence that attempted to reach a measure of balance which led to needless conflicts across millennia. That those who studied and controlled it were giving away their individuality to a higher power that did not care about them as people, rather as a collective that served the goal of cycled destruction and rebirth. When it came to designing the characters, Chris decided to have ones that were specifically meant to examine different threads of the Force. One that consciously decided to remove themselves from it, one who had been stripped of it, one who was consumed by it, and one who used it to keep themselves going through immeasurable anguish, providing insight into the mindset of one who just can't enjoy a space opera about galactic wars and space wizards. I think we've all experienced this at one point or another with a piece of media, whether it's one we used to love or one we never liked in the first place. The idea of one concept that inadvertently sours your entire experience because of what you see is ultimately harmful towards the characters of said world. For example, Luke Skywalker's pessimistic attitude in The Last Jedi. There was an endless sea of videos from fans of all walks of life who felt disgusted at Luke's change from the optimistic Jedi Knight who redeemed his father's fall from grace to a washed-up hermit who hides from his problems. People who took said negativity and used their passion to create content for the enjoyment of others. Where I think many get it wrong, however, is that the critique can often slip into venting when it's supposed to unite people. KOTOR 2 doesn't scream its criticism at you, nor does it tell you that you are somehow at fault for enjoying it. It is a Star Wars game through and through, and anyone who enjoys Star Wars will love it. However, it also doesn't prop up those who agree with him as righteous, but rather frames it as frustration with purpose. Chris presents his critique of this once seemingly innocent concept and allows the player to determine whether or not the argument is sound, to tell the audience, your universe is hiding a terrible reality, and I want to show you what that is.
It is said that the Force has a will. It has a destiny for us all. I wield it But it uses us all, and that is abhorrent to me, because I hate the Force. I hate that it seems to have a will, that it would control us to achieve some measure of balance when countless lives are lost. But in you, I see the potential to see the Force die, to turn away from its will, and that is what pleases me.
The best narratives in any media are the ones that let the viewer come to their own conclusions with the information presented, rather than explicitly telling you what you should or should not believe in. KOTOR II is a persuasive essay on the Star Wars mythos, put into video game form. It is there to bring a counterpoint to everything the series had established. The thesis is that the Force is a horrifying concept that has caused needless conflicts that span generations and should be destroyed. Its main arguments are it leads to the lack of individual power, it builds ignorance over time, and it causes the supposed need for balance. Its supporting claims are the supposed fall of the greatest Jedi general of the Mandalorian Wars, Revan, the extremist views of the Jedi and Sith, and conflicts such as the Mandalorian Wars and the Jedi Civil War. Any persuasive essay also needs an opposing view, and that opposing view is held by the remnants of the Jedi Council and the remaining members of the Sith Triumvirate, dared to showcase the ideas that were once unchallenged by its world. The conclusion is a challenge of philosophical beliefs with the main antagonist that is directly influenced by the actions of the player, tying in the narrative and the gameplay mechanics to go into one final challenge, all in service in making the universe a better place, which is a key distinction. None of this is about telling the audience their universe shouldn't be loved. Rather, it is about understanding what could be improved, and sometimes that improvement requires potentially sacrilegious intentions, such as the death of the Force. With how elegant KOTOR II was able to present these ideas, it ended up resonating with me out of the blue. I had done research on this before for my first video, and it hadn't dawned on me until now that I could have been applying Chris's approach to my own work all this time. See, I strove to be overtly positive in my videos, to be less of a critique that spewed negativity or came out from a negative mindset. Most of my videos are about the positive aspects of media, even those that have critiquing in them. I normally attempt to give them their fair shake. It didn't occur to me that creativity fueled by hatred doesn't have to be hateful in nature. As content creators, our audiences are attracted to our opinions. We shape our community based on the tone we present. I struggled constantly with thinking a critique was too negative or I would turn people away by being stern about my beliefs. Chris Avellone taught me that it was okay to delve into the darker aspects of my analytical mind and to use that to give my audience a better product, to create discussion, as KOTOR II certainly has over a decade onward. KOTOR II continues to shine as a brilliantly woven narrative that ties its theme through its characters and mechanics. An example of using your anger in a positive fashion that isn't conveyed as such, but rather is a frame of mind. And I hope that this video was able to tell you why it was, and continues to be, my favorite Star Wars story of all time.